perhaps we could talk about some of the challenges of
Sure.
of making it work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess what I noticed when I first got involved in action learning, and I was learning myself about the history of it, was that there were a lot of people who were quite sort of evangelistic about the principles and revens and all of that. And that didn't necessarily serve them well when it came to getting action learning to work in practice in a practical way in a corporate sort of environment. And you needed to actually connect action learning to the organizational systems, whether those are the performance management systems or the coaching processes. It needed to be integrated with other systems. So, that's a challenge. And I think for me, it means that when we talk about a facilitator of action learning, I designed an action learning facilitator accreditation process. And in order to design it, I looked back at what Revan said about action learning, and he talked about 3 roles. And I've changed the names of these roles a bit, but they're valid and important roles. And they're not all about what goes on in the learning set. To me, that's the easy bit. If you're a good coach or you're a good mentor, you can probably pick up how to be a facilitator of learning sets quite easily with some training and support. The real challenges are how do you actually get action learning to be accepted as a method of learning and development in organizations which are increasingly full of experts in different disciplines or new professions that are emerging in organizations, who might actually sort of be a little bit cynical about, well, hang on, this is a process where you just bring people together and they ask questions of each other and then you solve the problem and everybody's learned. And, is it kind of, is it like a group hug? Is it a kind of about just being happy and supportive? No, it's not. It's actually about being really challenging of each other. But the first challenge is getting the permission, if you like, and support and advocacy for action learning to be introduced into an organization. You might even not call it action learning. You might call it something else because the language of the business, suggests that something else might be more acceptable. But the principle is key, is that you need to get support from the very top if you can. It's, the most successful programs I've been involved with, they've had very high level support. It might be the MD of the division of the bank, or it might be the chief people officer, in a government organization. They've supported the idea, they're behind it, they believe in it, and they're backing you to then get it set up. And what I would typically then do is form a learning, a steering group. A steering group which includes the supporters of this approach, a number of senior people, and actually the cynics. So the people who might be sort of critical about it, bring them inside the tent, get them on the steering group. I did it with one bank a few years ago, and there was a program project manager, a very senior guy, who was a bit sort of skeptical about the whole idea. And we were introducing action learning linked to a master's program there for senior and middle level leaders, one of the big UK banks. And we knew that this guy needed to be brought into the senior team. In fact, the MD even suggested it, into the steering group. Just met quarterly and oversaw what was going on. And we included on that steering group participants from the program, actually. We had 2 participants who were elected by the program participants themselves, and they elected 2 participants to join the steering group. They rotated it. So they had a real voice at the top table in terms of how the program was being rolled out, how it was being adapted, how it's being received, feeding back, etc. So for me, I call that the role of the mobilizer of action learning. So that's, wearing the hat of the person who's going to try and get this going. In the example of the client that I was just telling you about, I was partly the mobilizer, but I was from outside, working in a bought-in contracting role. But the mobilizer, I can think inside, who was the chief of training and learning and development, and they were very strong in being able to oil the wheels within the organisation to get it accepted and embedded. So mobilise is a key role. Then you have the role of the set advisor, so the person who's running or facilitating the learning set, which I've talked about. And then you have a kind of learning catalyst. So this role of somebody who action learning's happening, but you're taking a holistic approach to it rather than saying this is a training course. This is something that's happening sort of in a discrete and separate way. As a catalyst of learning, they're spotting the opportunities to connect learning from the programs or from the learning sets with learning that's happening in other parts of the business or organization. They're able to spread the learning, if you like, and aim towards creating a learning organization. So three modes, if you like, of facilitation of action learning: the mobilizer, the set facilitator, and the learning catalyst.